Zerl groaned and flailed his arms and legs in shock as he looked at the projected message. "You have got to be kidding. What are they letting on campus now?" asked his friend Glorp, who was a jelly-like mass with eye stalks. Glorp slid closer to look at the news. Zim yelled, his skin turning a bright purple. "It says here that in the spirit of interspecies unity and cultural exchange, students may now bring their tamed animals to classes. It looks like the Chancellor has had too much fermented honeydew. But some of those border worlders have really scary pets. Remember when Jaxer showed us his dog? I was scared for days." "Oh, relax," Glorp said with many eyes rolling. "Maybe they will add some cute fuzzy creatures that will warm up even your cold, dying heart." They had no idea that the next day would be remembered as the Day of 1,000 Shrieks, or Bring Your Powerful Pet to Class Day as the humans would later call it. Professor Jarn slithered into the hall, and his scales sparkled in the white lights. He was proud of his calmness because he was an expert on exobiology in the Milky Way. But the usual view of tentacles, antennae, and different alien parts was now blocked by, "Dear Universe, what were those things in the front row?" If Tom remembered right, a human student was sitting down with what looked like a hairy, four-legged attacker on his lap. The tongue was sticking out, showing a set of sharp teeth. Zynth Rock tried to stay calm and asked, "Mr. Tom, what in the universe is that?" Tom smiled and scratched the thing behind its sharp ears. "This is my Alsatian, Max. Is not he cute?" Max, who was adorable, picked that time to let out a loud bark that made everyone in the classroom jump or squirm several feet into the air. "Adorable, indeed," Synthro said in a low voice, remembering to change his will afterward. Lisa Jai, a human, smiled as she stroked the twisted scales around Miss Gia's neck and asked, "What is that snake-like bundle on your shoulder?" "This is Serpent, my royal python. Do not worry, she is very nice." Immediately, a student from Zaya in the back passed out because their chlorophyll-rich blood could not handle the shock. Synth looked around the room and noticed the variety of Terran animals. A rat moved in and out of a Zayton student's many pockets, a parrot made fun of a Vorticon's mating call, and was that a spider climbing the wall? "Right," Synth Rob said, his normally sweet voice now a forced whisper. "Shall we start our lesson on the cute animals that live in the Snarlish system?" As the professor tried to start his lesson, chaos broke out. After having enough of the Zayton's pockets, the bored ferret ran away, running across tables and making a lot of noise and flapping its arms and legs as it went. "Bandit, come back," yelled the tall man Alex as he chased his pet. At the same time, the parrot took off and flew around the room while squawking a mix of swear words and alien mating calls. The Vorticon student was now a very embarrassed green color, and he was trying to make it clear to his friends that he was not proposing to everyone at once. In the middle of all the chaos, Max, Tom's Alsatian, thought the rat would be fun to play with. He jumped off Tom's lap with a happy bark and joined the chase, his strong legs easily jumping over rows of desks. Professor Synthro was shocked to see that his carefully planned lesson turned into something that looked like a scene from a ridiculous comedy. He thought for a moment about leaving right away, maybe to a peaceful gas giant where the only living things were simple bugs that depend on hydrogen. There was chaos in the lecture hall, and there was even more chaos in the canteen. The Erwin canteen manager, Grick, had seen a lot of strange things in her hundreds of years of serving space gruel, but nothing had prepared her for seeing a person eating with one hand while holding a mouse in the other. "Oh, dear," she shook her head nervously at the girl. "I think you have dropped your—" The girl looked up, confused. "Is that a snake in the glass tank on the table?" "Oh, this is not a snack, it is for Mr. Whiskers," she said, pointing to the animal. Grick was scared as he saw the girl throw the mouse into the tank. It turned out that Mr. Whiskers did not have any food preferences. There was another table where a group of Andromedans were poking their food with their tentacular probes. They were too sidetracked by the golden dog that was sitting calmly next to its owner. One mumbled, Is it going to eat us? Mike, the strong man who owned the dog, laughed. No, Buddy here only eats dog food and the odd school project. The Andromedans were not comforted, especially when Buddy let out a loud sneeze that sent a blob of saliva flying across 3 tables. In the corner, a very brave Venusian had started a conversation with Emily, a small human holding what looked like a living cotton ball. The Venusian pointed a tentacle at the soft thing and asked, So, what is that? The girl smiled. This is Snowball, my Angora rabbit. Would you like to touch her? The Venusian tentatively stretched out a tentacle, but when Snowball twitched her nose, she pulled it back with a yelp. Emily could not help but laugh when she said, It moved, the fur moved on its own. That is just how rabbits are. I promise they are not dangerous. Harmless? Asked the Venusian. It has claws and teeth. On my planet, anything with claws and teeth is considered a Class 3 extinction-level threat. Just then, Snowball let out a cute little sneeze, which made the Venusian jump backward and knock over 3 chairs, including a very confused Martian. The peace in the diner was broken even more when a student named Jake walked in with what looked like a small dragon. Hey everyone, meet Snappy. Jake yelled with pride as he rubbed the scaly animal on the head. The cafeteria went silent as everyone focused their eyes and other senses on the scaly animal. Is that a Terran swamp dragon? Grick asked, her voice almost too low to hear. Jake smiled. Come closer. This is an alligator. They are connected to dinosaurs. Snappy is still young, so he can stay inside. When he is fully grown, he will have to stay in the campus pond. The alien students all shivered at the thought of this scary animal being young. A few of them promised themselves they would stay away from the school pond from now on. Snappy let out a yawn that showed off his very sharp teeth. He had no idea how scary he was making people feel. Right away, a Plutonian student passed out from being so shocked by what they saw. Jake thought the aliens were being quiet, so he said, Do not worry. Old Snap is really nice. He even knows tricks. Want to see him roll over? Jake waved his hand, and Snappy the alligator started rolling on the dining floor like a heavily armored reptile barrel. No one could politely, or not so politely, say no. It looks like seeing an ancient killing machine doing circus tricks was too much for the alien students to handle. In a flash, the restaurant was empty, leaving only the confused people and their different pets. Tough crowd, Jake thought as he scratched Snappy's rough head. Professor Synth Rowe had finally been able to get things back in order in the lecture hall. The rat had been caught, the parrot had been given crackers to take the edge off of its noise, and Max the Alsatian was back to sitting quietly next to Tom. Let us try this again, Jarn said, trying to ignore the fact that his scales were still shaking from stress. Today, we will be talking about how non-threatening herbivores have evolved in the Cygna system. Can anyone think of an example? Zor's tentacle rose in the back of the room. He had spent most of the class trying to merge with his chair. Yes, Mr. Zell, Synth Rowe asked, glad that things were back to normal. Well, Zor began, his voice shaking, there is the fluffless harmless. It has soft fur and no teeth or claws at all. Great, yelled Synth Rowe, and can you explain how it defends itself? Zix Zell asked. He nodded, feeling more sure of himself. When it feels threatened, the fluffless harmless sends out a cloud of spores that make possible attackers feel calm and peaceful. That is great, Jarn said. Now, can anyone tell me why? One of the human students laughed out loud, cutting him off. She had a cat curled up in her lap and said, Sarah, I am sorry, but that sounds like the most boring animal ever. Where's the fun? The danger? Synth Rowe blinked in surprise. My dear, the whole point of these things is to stay away from danger at all costs, she said. But where's the fun in that? Tom asked, still scratching Max behind the ears. Half the fun of having a pet is that they can surprise you at any time, she said. The alien students looked at each other in shock. The thought of adding some randomness to one's life on purpose was completely strange to most of them. Synthro carefully said, maybe this would be a good time for some cultural exchange. Humans, why do not you tell us more about your relationships with your friends on Earth? This was the start of the wackiest alien biology class in Universal Academy's history. The humans took turns telling the aliens about their pets. Each story was more confusing than the last. Lisa talked about how Serpent, her royal python, helped her unwind after a hard day. As some of the alien students moved their chairs away from her, she said, it is relaxing to watch her slither around her aquarium. Alex told the class stories about the crazy things his rat did. This bandit once stole every left sock in my room, he said with pride, as if it were a big deal. It took me weeks to figure out where he had hidden them. The alien students could not understand why someone would live with a thieving creature and then brag about how bad it was. The class was really confused by Sarah's story about her cat, Whiskers. So I was sound asleep, she started, when all of a sudden, at 3 a.m., I feel this weight on my chest. I open my eyes, and there's Whiskers, looking right at me, his face about an inch from mine. The alien students leaned in, hoping to hear about her narrow escape from this midnight attacker. Then, Sarah said with a smile, he pawed me on the nose and meowed for food. It was so cute. There was a moment of stunned silence, broken only by the sound of Zop's tentacles tying themselves into stress knots. He spoke slowly and said, let me get this straight. This thing follows you around while you sleep, wakes you up at strange times, and demands food, and you find that cute? Sarah asked with a big smile. Of course. That is how cats show they love, she said. The alien students looked at each other in shock. The way humans thought about love seemed a lot like how most other species would think about psychological pain. As the lesson went on, it became clear that humans' ties with their pets were a lot more complicated than the aliens had thought at first. These animals were not just kept for their usefulness, they were also loved family members, friends, and confidants. The alien students found the idea so strange and foreign that it interested them in a strange way. Even though they were scared at first, they started to ask questions to try to figure out what this strange human behavior meant. One Syrian student, who looked confused, asked, but why would you knowingly share your living space with a predator? Tom smiled and rubbed Max on the belly. Because they are loyal, loving, and really great company. Plus, have you seen how cute they are when they are sleeping? Max rolled over and smiled like a dog to show his point. Many alien students cooed even though they did not mean to. Professor Synthro thought, fascinating. His scientific interest had won out over his original fear. It looks like people and these animals have got along well, but there must be some downsides, the humans said. They looked at each other and shrugged. Well, Alex said, Bandit did once eat my quantum physics homework. It was interesting trying to explain that to Professor Week. And Serpent likes to get out of her aquarium, Lisa added. You have not lived until you have had to explain to your Zorax roommate why there is a snake in the shower. These stories made the alien students laugh instead of being scared. It was both strange and impressive that the human could find fun in situations that could be dangerous. Over the course of the class, the original fear gave way to a careful interest. By the end of the lesson, some alien students were even brave enough to go up to the humans and their pets and ask to touch or play with the strange animals from Earth. Zig Sayer, who had been very nervous for most of class, had to touch Max, even though he did not want to. To his surprise, the dog's fur was soft, and Max's tail moving in a regular way made him feel calm. Zell finally started to untwist his limbs and said to Tom, you know, I think I am starting to understand why you keep these things around. There is something comfortable about them. Tom smiled. See? I told you Max was a good boy. Who knows, maybe you will get your own pet someday. The thought made Zop's skin turn a pale green color, but he did not right away brush it off. He had learned something today. The universe was full of shocks. As the day came to a close, the alien students met in the common room to talk happily about their interactions with the human pets. Did you see how that rat moved? Glorp asked with excitement. Zell, who had finally come out from under his desk, grudgingly said, I guess some of them were less scary than expected. That bunny thing was almost bearable. Almost bearable? Glorp cried. Zop's tentacles twisted in shame as he said, I saw you pet it when you thought no one was looking. You even smiled. He said in a weak voice, I was just doing a touch check for science reasons. Someone came in and stopped their conversation, Professor S. Rob. He slithered into the common room looking both tired and excited. A lot of barks, meows, squawks, and hisses could be heard as students and their pets walked past the common room on their way back to their dorms. Well, students, I hope today has been educational. I must admit, my perspective on human-animal relationships has been significantly broadened, the professor said. Seeing a student walk by with a hedgehog on their shoulder made Glorp think, maybe we have been too quick to judge humans. If they can form bonds with animals so different from themselves, maybe there is hope for better understanding between all species. Zigger gave a thoughtful nod, and for the first time that day, his tentacles relaxed. Though I may be right, I still think I will stick to non-carnivorous friends, thank you very much. Just then, a small, round robot rolled into the room and beeped happily. They gave Zell a cleaning bot as a gift to help him keep his room clean. Zell patted the bot and said, This is my kind of pet. It does not have any teeth or claws, and it cleans up after itself. The alien students laughed, and the day's stress finally went away as they talked more about their experiences. A new spirit of friendship filled the air. It looked like the love that people had for their pets had brought the different types of students closer together in some way. From the window, I could see the school planet's 2 moons rising in the purple sky. I could also hear howls on the grounds. The dogs of the humans were singing their evening song, which was a scary tune that made the aliens shiver. The chills were still there, but now they had a new flavor, gratitude. The next morning, there was a lot of activity on the Galactic University grounds. A lot of people had heard about what happened the day before, and now even those who had not been there were eager to see the humans' pets for themselves. As Jop walked to his first class, he could not help but notice how different the mood was. Once wary of humans, the alien students were now coming closer, their interest having won out over their fear. A small group of people had formed in the square around Sarah and her cat, Whiskers. The cat was enjoying all the attention, purring loudly as tentacles, pincers, and other strange limbs gently stroked its fur. A student from Neptune asked, "And you say this energy is a sign of happiness?" Their bioluminescent spots were glowing with interest. Sarah smiled and nodded. "Yes, that is right. Cats purr when they are happy or calm." "That is very interesting," exclaimed the Neptunian. "On my world, movements usually mean that there will be an earthquake or a mating call soon." Whiskers did not know that he was helping to connect cultures across space, so he just rolled over and petted his belly. Zigger felt a strange warmth in his chest as he watched this exchange. It was strangely moving to see species that are so different from each other bond over something as easy as an earth creature with fur. Someone tapped him on the shoulder, waking him up from his thoughts. When he turned around, he saw Tom standing there with Max the German Shepherd sitting next to him. "Hey, Zell," Tom said with a smile. "Max here wants to play catch with you." "He had a great time meeting you yesterday," Max said. Zell's tentacles curled in surprise. Tom held up a small, bright yellow ball and asked, "What, play fetch?" It is simple. Just throw this, and Max will get it back. It is his favorite game. Zell looked at the ball with doubt, then at Max. The dog was very happy, as his tail was moving happily. Zell felt the edges of his mouth, which are like smiles for him, twitch upwards against his will. Well, he said slowly, I guess one game could not hurt. To learn more about it, of course. Tom smiled and handed him the ball. Of course. Just throw it. Zell grabbed the ball with one arm, wound it up, and threw it across the yard with a lot of force. Max was gone in an instant, his strong legs taking him quickly across the grass. The alien students were amazed as Max gracefully jumped and grabbed the ball. He then turned around and ran back to Zell. When the dog dropped the ball at Zell's feet, she looked up eagerly. His voice was filled with wonder as he said, He brought it back. Tom laughed and said, that is the game. Zell, want to throw it again? Everyone was surprised when he said yes, even himself. I believe I do. As Zell and Max kept playing fetch, more alien students came over and watched with interest. Soon, other people wanted to try throwing the ball, and soon there was an unplanned pet throwing competition on the field. The scene was watched by Professor Synth Rowe as he walked by on his way to the faculty room. When he saw Zigger, who had been so scared yesterday that he was almost paralyzed, laughing and playing with the Earth dog like it was nothing strange, he thought to himself, wow. Synth Rowe thought to himself, that is amazing. Remarkable beyond words. As the days went by, having Earth pets on campus felt less like a surprise and more like a normal part of college life. The alien students, on the other hand, were quickly getting used to their new classmates who had fur, scales, and feathers. Professor Xenonthop's xenobiology class had unofficially added regular show and tell meetings where human students would bring in their pets and talk about how to care for them, how they behave, and how they evolved. There was a ball python wrapped around Lisa's shoulders when she said, today we are going to talk about snake shedding. The alien students leaned forward, their faces showing a mix of interest and fear. Lisa continued by gently stroking Noodle's scales and saying, you see, snakes lose their skin as they grow. It is called ecdysis. She went on to explain the process in great detail, even showing holograms of snakes in different stages of shedding. The alien students were glued to the screen, and their fear of the snake turned into scientific interest. That is pretty interesting, Zishi said, bending his tentacles to show that he was thinking about it. Lisa smiled and said, it is kind of like how the sand people on Arcturus shed their skin. Exactly. There are a lot of ways that animals on Earth are like animals on other worlds. Maybe we are not so different after all. Aliens on campus started to see similarities between the pets on Earth and the animals on their own worlds, which made everyone agree with this. For example, the Syrians found that dogs' loyalty made them think of their own ties with the empathic fungus that lived in their home world. Grick, the heroine who served lunch, had even changed her mind. She started saving food scraps for her pets and loved seeing how much they enjoyed her cooking. This was very different from how most students politely tolerated cafeteria food. She told Mike one day as she gave Buddy the golden retriever a treat, you know, these Earth creatures are not so bad once you get to know them. They remind me of the glowworms we used to keep back home. They are much furrier, but just as sweet. Mike smiled and scratched Buddy behind the ears. They get better as time goes on, do not they? As the term went on, an odd trend started to show itself. Because of their human peers, some of the alien kids had started to talk about wanting to get pets of their own. Some interesting problems came up because of this. No, Blur, Zick Sayer sighed what seemed like 100 times, you cannot adopt an Earth shark. For one thing, where would you keep it? Our dorm room is already too small for your gel-like body. Blur's eye stalks drooped in sadness. But they are so graceful and quick. Did you know they have to keep swimming or they will drown? That is commitment. Zixzel snapped his tentacles together in anger. That is not a pet, it is a machine that never stops moving and has teeth. At the same time, the Betelgeuse student who had felt ashamed by the parrots imitating on the first day was now strangely interested in the idea of birds that can talk. He spent hours in the aviary trying to teach the mental germs of his own species how to make Earth bird calls. To say the least, the findings were not clear. A quick mental image of a squawked Polly wants a cracker and the thoughts of more than one student had scared them. Dr. Shinro had also been bitten by the pet bug. He had just bought a small aquarium with some Earth tardigrades in it, which he found endlessly interesting. He would tell anyone who would listen, "Did you know that these tiny things can live in space? That is amazing. That is amazing." As the term came to a close, it was clear that the Bring Your Pet to School program had been a huge success, though maybe not in the way that everyone had hoped. Yes, there had been some problems along the way. For example, the spider that got out in the zero-gravity physics lab caused a stir, and no one would soon forget the day Jake's alligator, Snappy, chose to swim in the quantum probability pool without permission. Overall, though, having Earth pets on campus had done more to improve communication and teamwork between species than a dozen international meetings. All of this came to a head at the Interstellar Cultural Festival at the end of the year. In the past, this event had been pretty formal, with each species showing off their traditional art, music, and food. Things were different this year, though. People and aliens of all kinds were moving around the fairgrounds, and many of them had their pets with them. There were classes for dog agility, shows on how to clean cats, and even an exhibit called Scales and Tails with different kinds of snakes and frogs. Before, Zix was scared of Earth animals just thinking about them. Now, he was happy to show off his new pet, a small, fluffy hamster he called Quantum. The Plutonians were very interested, so he told them, "You see, Quantum here has properties of both particle and wave. Sometimes he is in his wheel, sometimes he is in his little house, and sometimes he seems to be in both places at the same time." The Plutonians nodded wisely, clearly impressed by this deep philosophical observation. Blurp was nearby showing people how to take good care of betta fish. He had not been able to adopt a shark, but he liked the colored battlefish because they were like jelly. The professorial tone of Blur's voice made him say, "Now, it is important to remember that betta fish should not be made to fight, despite their name. They are happy to show off their fins quietly if given enough room." It was so bad that even the teachers joined in. Professor Shinner had made a hologram show with his favorite tardigrades that were blown up to the size of small dogs. Alien students oohed and awed as the microscopic creatures walked across the screen and looked like tiny bears with 8 legs. But as the event came to an end, Dean Zix went on stage to give a speech. The old Andromedan felt proud as he looked out over the sea of faces, some of which were human, some alien, and some animal. When we first announced the Bring Your Pet to School initiative, the dean said, making expressive shapes with his tentacles, "I will admit that there were people who thought it was a disaster. Death World pets on campus," they said. "It will be chaos." The crowd laughed. Yes, the dean said with a twinkle in his compound eyes, there was some chaos. But there was also learning, understanding, and, dare I say it, friendship. He pointed to the crowd, where humans and aliens were standing next to each other, many with pets at their feet, in their arms, or around their shoulders. The dean told them, "Look around you. What do you see?" "I see the future. A future where our differences are not obstacles but opportunities, a future where we learn from each other, grow together, and create a community across the galaxy that celebrates variety in all its forms, whether they are tentacled, furred, scaled, or winged." The crowd cheered and made a lot of noise with human voices, strange sounds, and excited animal sounds. So, the dean said in the end, his voice rising above the noise. "I am happy to say that the bring your pet to school policy will be permanent, starting right now." The cheers got even louder. It was so exciting that Zix-Siop could not help but wave his tentacles around and make a trilling sound of happiness. Quantum, the hamster, was safe in a special containment box that the engineering department made. He spun his wheel to show that he was happy. Zix-Siop felt a tap on the shoulder as the party went on. When he turned around, Todd was standing there with Rex by his side, as usual. With a smile, Todd said, "Hey, Zach. Do you remember how scared you were the first time you saw Rex? Look at you now, a happy pet owner." Zor's face turned a deep purple color. "Well, I guess I overreacted a bit. Your Earth creatures are not quite as scary as I thought they would be," Todd said with a laugh. "That is very kind of you. You know, Rex here has grown to like you a lot. I think he thinks of you as part of his pack now." Rex grunted and wagged his tail and looked up at Zigger with clear love in his eyes. Zigger felt a warm glow going through his body. He put his hand on Rex's head and said, I am honored." He quickly looked at his hamster and said, "I never thought I would say this, but I have grown quite fond of him, too. And Quantum, of course." Todd thought, it is crazy how much things have changed. When I first came to Galactic University, I was worried about fitting in. Just being from a death world is not exactly a selling point in most of the galaxy, she said. Zeeler nodded in agreement. He remembered how many students had been wary of their human peers at first. "It is like the whole school has come together now," Todd said. "And it is all because of our pets." Zix-Siop agreed. Who would have thought that creatures we first thought were scary monsters would turn out to be the best politicians the galaxy has ever seen? More of their classmates joined them as they talked. Blur boozed over, and his bed of fish was swimming happily in a water bubble that was floating above. Lisa came in with Noodle on her shoulders. The scales of the snake sparkled in the warm light of the setting sun. Jake himself was there, but luckily not Snappy the alligator. The dean did not allow any big water animals to attend the event. This group of people, aliens, and animals stood together and watched the party. The sight showed how far they would come from being afraid and not understanding each other to becoming friends and respecting each other. Blur said with some thought, "I think we have learned something important here. It is not about where we come from or how we look. It is about the relationships we make." Lisa agreed and scratched Noodle on the chin. "Our pets are different from us, but they are still part of our families. And now I feel like we are all part of one big, weird, intergalactic family," she said. Zishi agreed. He would have thought they were crazy if they had told him at the start of the semester that he would be standing here with Earth animals all around him and feel completely at ease. But he was still there, and he would not have it any other way. The dog's nighttime song began as the fair came to an end and the twin moons rose in the sky. They were not by themselves this time, though. Sounds from other worlds joined in, like the melodic trills of the Syrians, the resonant hums of the Andromedans, and even the subsonic waves of the Jovians. In a way, it was a celebration of their differences and their renewed union. Professor Shinner, who was nearby, just shook his head in shock. He whispered, "Simply amazing," and his scales sparkled with feeling. "I do think we have seen the start of a new age in ties between stars," said the speaker. Zix-Siop could not help but agree as the strange and beautiful music filled the room. It was going to be different for a long time. He saw that as a good thing. People would tell and retell the story of how Earth pets changed Galactic University for years to come. It was going to become a tale, a bright example of how kindness and understanding could bring people together, no matter how big the gap was. It all began with a simple message: people on Death World can now bring their pets to class. Who knew that those words would change the course of history across the galaxy? But on the other hand, People like to say that the best things in life come in small, fuzzy packages. As the party went late into the night, there was laughter, meowing, barking, and sometimes the hissing of a reptile. One thing was clear: the galaxy's future was bright, and it would be a lot furrier than anyone had ever thought.